1920s fashion is one of the most glorified, stigmatized, and stereotyped decades of fashion. This means tight dresses, feathers, and stockings, but the 20s were much more than what we see in movies. Today, we're going to take a look at the most popular trends of the 20s and delve into the details. We're going to start off with a casual and iconic look, the day dress. With new expansions of transportation and industry, working women became more popularized and the silhouettes followed. This is truly where we see a cultural shift away from sexualizing the female body. Contrary to early styles of accentuated waists and push-up busts, the 1920s adopted a boxier silhouette and flatter chests. Although stereotypes say otherwise, the 1920s was not a fan of showing knees in daily life, and dresses and skirts often fell over them. Colors ranged from neutrals to pastels, as many cultural influences were taken for fashion. Accessories were also incredibly simple. Women wore comfortable shoes for running errands, such as flats and a low heel, and often accessorized with hats, gloves, a pearl necklace, and a small handbag for carry. The cutting of hair in the 1920s was a process of breaking a long tradition of long hair for femininity. Many women adopted the short cut in response to the women's rights movement. Popular styles were a short pixie cut with curls as the curling iron became more accessible, or Marcel waving, a type of finger waving that was adopted at the end of the decade. Makeup of the 20s was much more toned down compared to today's makeup trends. Women often chose to have a doe-eyed look and use makeup to enhance the beauty that was already there. Rouge was one of the most essential products for any woman and came in a variety of shades of red. It also came in a cream or powder form. Base powder in a compact with a fluffy puff was introduced to even out the skin. Eyebrows were combed and filled in to be arched and thin, and eyes were surrounded in smoky shadows and mascara to darken lashes. Most iconically, red lipstick was a signature for women in the 20s as it embodied the strength and power of women. Now onto one of the most popular styles, the flapper. Flappers were young women that wanted to feel exhilarated in the act of rebellion, as they often drank and smoked regardless of the Prohibition Act. They embodied the spirit of the jazz era and had an urge to change societal norms. Flapper girls adopted dropping waistlines and rising hemlines while still keeping the boxy-like silhouette that other women wore on the daily. It was within these women where the little black dress was popularized by designers like Coco Chanel. Flappers also applied heavier makeup such as dark thick eyeliner and added finishing touches with pearl necklaces and a hair accessory like a feather. Many are less educated in men's fashion in the 20s, but it's important to note that these designs were extremely exciting. Much like women's fashion, neutral colors were often preferred when it came to clothing, but as time passed, men increasingly began to favor somewhat wacky designs and wild colors. For lots of men, this is a turning point from the conservative wear of the past. Seen as formal wear today, suits were worn by men in the 20s on a day-to-day basis. Suits were worn with matching dress pants and a white collared shirt underneath. What sets apart suits from the 20s from other decades is the high lapels. The high lapels only exposed the top of the white collared shirt and the tie. Dark and light browns, medium blues, dark greens, and grays were the most popular colors, and patterns such as plaids, checkers, and thick and thin pinstripes were also deemed acceptable. Interestingly, black suits were seen as funeral wear opposed to daily wear. Just as red lipstick was an iconic symbol for women, the felt hat was the equivalent for men. Felt hats were worn year-round and came in the same color as many suit sets. They came in a variety of shapes, such as the fedora, which is still worn today, the Panama, which is a straw hat, and the derby or bowler hat. If that sounds familiar, you probably recognize Doris, the evil bowler hat from Meet the Robinsons. The preferred shoe of the 1920s was the Oxford. Oxford shoes came in black, white, and different shades of brown. They were worn almost everywhere, which include business meetings, golf courses, and on the daily streets. They started off being incredibly simplistic, but later adopted different textures as alligator, snake, and lizard skin was used. On to much comfier clothes. Knitwear was incredibly popular after World War I, and men often sported casual sweaters simply for looks, to keep warm, or most notably to play golf. It's easy to say that sweaters of the 20s are much more colorful and fashionable than ones today. They came in a variety of colors, and as popularity grew, the prints, colors, and designs grew crazier and crazier. Because suits were still mostly the norm in daily wear, men combined the two by putting a white-colored shirt and a tie under their sweaters so that it was still visible in the top area. A creative and sophisticated way of wearing the sweater that was worn by all men of varying classes. The fashion of the 1920s defined the decade like no other. The 1920s was a time of big change as many new art styles, activism, and new laws came into fruition. We see a new definition of fashion as more designers are willing to take new risks. The 20s also introduces the beginning of the abandonment of gender norms and roles by society as androgynous looks are introduced. We see a surge in female power and rebellion made by bold choices in clothing, and for men we see them branching out to new styles that were previously deemed unprofessional. Together, men and women of the 20s have truly created one of the most extravagant decades of fashion.